5:30. Mr. Lubir.
Yeah, so this is the blight code addition that we've been discussing for several months ago. I think actually the mayor brought to our attention a similar code in another entity. Just to reiterate the basics, it is not replacing any code. It will just be an addition to current code, giving code enforcement another tool. It's looking at the more severe, potential severe blighted properties, sets a point system for various violations. Once the points are up to 100, that initiates some action, which includes informing the property owner that they have 30 days to correct the problems, otherwise they will be placed on a list and assessed a penalty. It's a rather severe penalty financially, so it's in their best interest to get properties up to where they need to be. Certainly answer any questions anyone might have regarding it.
I think you did a nice job on that. Everybody who worked
Mr.
on this.
McGowan really was consistent force behind it.
The only comment, and like I sent something to you and I saw you reply back, I just thought the registration fees were a little crazy, a little high. You know, $5,000 for a commercial, $2,500 for a residential, and it was almost for $2,500 for a vacant. I just thought, you know, I thought that was high, but I like the idea.
Yeah, and I don't recall if I shared with everyone, the thinking in the other municipalities that adopted this type of code was to have a penalty that severe. It would provide both an incentive to avoid letting your property get to that point, and there was also fear that if the penalty was too low, that a property owner who doesn't care would simply say, I'll pay the few hundred rather than put 1,000 into fixing it. So that was the thinking. It wasn't a number that we're dead set on, but it seemed to be consistent with what others have done.
Okay.
And we will make this available to anyone that wants it after the meeting. But just to give you an understanding, I mean, it takes a lot to get to 100 points. So the goal would be, if you know, and our code enforcement people are doing a very good job, so they're going to find these places. We're going to try to deal with those smaller violations initially. This will be with the people that ignore those types of things. For example, you have an issue with a roof, it's 10 points. A gutter problem, it's 5. Shutters, 5 points. Chimney, 10 points. A junk vehicle, 15. And I'm just kind of jumping around here, but unpermitted signage or things like that, 15 points. Presence of graffiti, 10 points. And I'm not going to go through the whole list, but so, I mean, it's a number of things that have to occur before you get to 100 points. So hopefully by being proactive and dealing with people and, you know, the carrot and the stick, and this is obviously the stick.
And for those properties that do not hit 100 points, we still have other existing code. It's not that you get a free pass because you're only at 75. You still have other issues that, if they're in violation, you can bet will be addressed, because it's too much of a risk and concern to too many citizens that their property is being devalued by someone who hasn't taken proper care of property near them. So that's really the heart of this. I did receive a call from a concerned citizen saying, what if, you know, I can't fix my roof this year? And to the mayor's point, I explained this is not we got you on one thing, you got to pay the stiff penalty. It takes a lot to be classified for this particular tool. This tool is meant for the severe blighted properties.
And the ordinance does provide for corrective action. In other words, you come forth and say, this is my plan. And I know that in the past, the village board has worked with citizens when they lay a plan out and say, this is how I'm going to do it. This is what I will do to get this property into compliance. So this is not just we get, as the trustee just said, it's just not a gotcha. So thank you to Mr. McGowan, our attorney, and of course, Trustee Lubir. So entertain a motion, trustees, to establish the public hearing for May 5th, 2015 at 5:30.
So moved.
Mr. Carver.
Second.
Second by Mr. Offroad. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. on spring cleanup dates. Mr. Fayad.
Yep, this is our time for the annual spring cleanup here in the village of Massena. We have allocated the last week of April, April 27th through May 1st, to collect debris on the north side of the Grass River. May 4th through the 8th, we collect south of the Grass River. We would respectfully ask that our residents not put out their debris until the weekend before their cleanup. Again, the same protocol is in place where we traverse a street only one time. Please do not use dark bags. Separate your material into different piles, having metal items in one pile, tires in another pile, freon items in another pile. We will not accept any construction debris, no televisions or computers, cell phones, fluorescent light bulbs, motor oil, that type of stuff. We will accept latex paint if it's dry, however the lid's got to be removed, and pour cat litter in there so that it's taken care of, dry that way. We will accept carpets and rugs, printers and keyboards. We will accept furniture. We'll accept white goods, all that stuff. We're going to leave the cardboard for recycling. The brush, a lot of people call up in regards to a brush during this time frame as well. The village will allow brush disposal at our old DPW site, however, they have to obtain a voucher. We do not want any commercial dumping, meaning we don't want a business to come in and charge the people to cut their tree down, take care of the brush, when in fact they leave it there and or they bring it to the DPW and dump it at the DPW. The DPW crews will chip branches and brush at the curb, and St. Lawrence County plans on holding a household hazardous waste collection day in Massena this year. They have not announced the date yet, but it's forthcoming.
Thank you guys ahead of time, because I know it's 2 weeks of craziness, so. Thank you. Number D, retirement, Brad Kirschner, water wastewater treatment plant chief plant operator, effective April 30, 2015. Served our community well, we will miss them. Entertain a motion. Mr. Hoffeld.
Second.
Second by Mr. Levere. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Ross, do you have any, he's your one Class A1, what's the designation?
Class 1A license. And the answer is not fully yet, however, he's 90% complete.
Who's 90% completed replacement?
For his replacement, yes, yep. He passed his exam, he just has to take a class, and then he'll be full-fledged.
And that's a requirement, right?
That is, because our plan is a 1A plan, we have to have a 1A operator.
See, these are some of the hidden costs that we don't see. If, I know that there's been discussions about potentially having the town pay the same rate that we pay. There are some hidden costs in there that I think we'd be foolish to give that away. I think we really have to think long and hard before we do that. It's just my opinion. I think the town pays 20 cents more per, pick a number, 1,000 gallons, 3,000 gallons.
60 cents a month more. is
60
what they
cents
pay,
a month
yeah,
more. Okay.
than what we pay.
And it's 20 cents per 1,000 gallons.
20 cents, okay, there's a minimum of 3,000.
3,000.
Which, compared to how other local municipalities treat those outside, it's very, very competitive. Very,
Yeah.
get a real nice deal.
Yeah, just for the sake of discussion,
Absolutely.
without naming the communities, 3 of the other 5 charge outside their villages twice the amount. Twice the amount. Nearly, in one case, nearly twice. In 2 of the other cases, it's just about twice. There's one exception, but there's a pilot fee attached to that one exception, so
Okay.
Well,
we do pretty well.
I might add to that, in all cases, every municipality charges twice as much as what we charge our constituents here in the village of Massena. Take a look at the minimum monthly bill.
Yeah.
is there a requirement to meter?
Yeah. There's not.
I didn't know because it was a resource, if there was an agency that wanted to make sure, I mean, I know coming out of the plant we meter it obviously, but I mean, at each homestead, there's no, or industry?
It's not a mandatory, the regulatory agencies want to see us meter,
Okay.
for, future funding purposes and whatnot, for monitoring how much water is going, and that way we can find leaks and whatnot. They wanna see it metered. There is other communities that do not have meters, but wish they did have meters.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else, trustees? E, we have a resignation. Effective May 15th, 2015, I will be resigning from the Village of Massena Zoning Board of Appeals due to my relocation outside of village limits. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time served and wish you and the board all the best in searching for my replacement. Regards, Frank Lawyer. Entertain a motion to accept that.
So moved with regrets.
Mr. Alpho?
Second.
Mr. Carl? Discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Work on his golf game this way. He's playing.
We have an appointment to replace that. Matthew G. Shantosh, effective May 15, 2015.
So moved.
Mr. Offeld, Mr. Shays, discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Voucher warrants.
I move that the voucher signed by trustee Carvel and myself be approved.
So moved.
Second by Mr. Carvel.
I'll
Discussion.
screw that up, Herb.
You know, if you'd have been here more often
I
last
know.
week,
Oh,
you'd
did
be.
you?
Still on Florida time.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Monthly reports. There's two over there. You can pass those reports down, please. Communication and correspondence, I don't have anything. Trustees have any communication or correspondence?
Yeah, you know, I probably should have asked that then. Up above at fire station bay floor, what is the, I mean, no matter what the insurance company says, we're still gonna have to do something. What is the, I mean, for the fire company, what are your thoughts?
We have one meeting on it, come up with some different ideas. One idea is to, one is put a new floor in, take the floor out, put a new floor back in. One is to add an addition on the front, which is cost prohibitive. And the other one is to fill the cellar in and put a floor over the top of it, which we don't know how that would definitely limit the space that the volunteers have downstairs.
My personal thoughts are, you go with the most economical, short-term, get it stabilized so there's no danger below, pursue other funding opportunities to see if we can get it back to where they can actually park inside their, consider.
That was the first option, Francis, just went through, like just to stabilize? Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's to stabilize, and then there's a full replace, which was a 300 and something thousand option. Stabilize, I think we were looking at about 75.
Okay, that's the number that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to do something, you can't wait on an insurance company forever, otherwise you're gonna need another insurance company.
I'm told the decision will be forthcoming,
Good.
so I don't know what that means in insurance terms though, so.
They're gonna sweat you out.
Any further communications, correspondence? Closing public comment period and question. Open it to the public. Sir, you're next, Mr. Gregg. Mr. Patterson.
Good evening, Mayor Krieger and all the trustees. I was gonna speak earlier, before the position there, but one of the things about being able to sit back and listen, you can hear what all the different opinions or points are, positive or negative. A couple things I wanna try to clear up about the sewer plant position water department, water plant position. We're sitting here talking about perhaps should we replace him, or maybe after Mr. Kirschner retires, hopefully in-house, we have someone that is going to take that position, but that's still going to leave another body that's not there. We've been shorthanded down there for likely 3 years. And if I had my shoulder surgery not done 4 years ago and had it for 4 years, I don't think anyone should be saying to me, well, you went 4 years without it. You got by. We don't need to replace it or fix your shoulder. That's what Mr. Carville, you are saying. And that's wrong. We should be saying to the members down there that have put up with less people to do the job, less time with their families, doing things that are supposed to have 2 people around from a safety standpoint, and we're doing it with 1, which is against pest regulations, but yet the guys did it. Did the village of Massena end up with a pest report when they came in here with people saying, no, we're doing that job by ourselves? No, because the guys stayed quiet, because you know why? They knew that we were supposed to get someone back in 2012 when this village board, minus the mayor and Mr. LeBeer, provided for us to replace that person. And the reason he wasn't replaced was because when Mr. Fayad called me, he says, Mark, we got a situation. We got a list from the civil service, and we're down to the last 3 people on a list of 57. And is this what the village of Massena wants to do? I don't, as a union representative, want to sit here and say, yeah, let's just hire anybody on the list. Take a chance that they, after you hire them, the village puts money into having them take the courses or go get their license, and they don't do it. Do we want that? No. So we, in discussions with Haas, he asked me, he said, would you be open to allowing the person that retired, and I think I can say Mr. LeBear, because that's the position that we were talking about, that Mr. LeBear come back on a part-time basis to help us out, because we've got evaluations from the health department, we got all these things we got to get done, and we don't have enough people to do it. In fact, actually, when the health department came in, I believe, Mr. Curry, you've read the report, and you tell me if I go wrong, I don't know exactly the words used, but they had major concerns about the fact, when Mr. LeBear was still here, that we didn't have enough people to run the water and sewer plant properly. Remember, we're not talking about, if we go with an extra person on the street crew, it's a hardship for us. But maybe a pothole doesn't get done as quickly, or a plow doesn't get dropped this way. When we're talking about our water and sewer plant, we're talking about the water that we put in people's houses and businesses for 15 to 16,000 people, maybe more. When we're talking about the sewer plant, we're talking about a plant that has to service the sewage in this community and make sure what's going back in the river isn't polluting the river. So we get DEC fines, or we get health department fines. And yet we're sitting here talking about whether or not we should replace the persons down there, when we have a rate that everyone just talked about. Mayor, Mr. Alfeld, Mr. Fayad, talked about the fact that they're lower than the other communities around us. We have another community not too far from us that has a similar population. They have 12 people working in their water and sewer plants. Why? Because they only have singular licenses, either water or sewer. We do it with 6, but we've done it with 5 for 3 years. And we're supposed to sit here and say, oh, well, you've done it without them. No, what about how much work they've done, how many things they've done? We've got a person sitting right here right now who's mad about the fact that we're not talking about even replacing the next person. We've been shorthanded. We're now going to go into it with a person that now has to get trained, get their license and everything else, and pow, what are we going to be hit with? Oh, and in a few more days we have Mr. Kirschner leaving with all of his experience. Yes, someone can step into his position. More than likely, he's gotten, what, 90% of it, Haas, I believe he said? But that doesn't give you another person, and now the new person that's coming in is what? They don't have their license yet, and now we're gonna be down one of the people, the main people we've had there. It is ridiculous that this committee, this board, would even think about not replacing Mr. Kirshner's job. And that's what I'm telling you needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Further public comment? Mr. Gray was next.
Going back to your discussion on the water and sewer rates inside, outside the village, just a quick question. The municipalities that you cited, do they have separate water bills, or is it part of their tax bill? Do you know?
Do people outside the town?
Not here. The municipalities that you cited, that some are double, one's almost double, two are practically double.
I don't know the answer to how the billing procedure works. I don't know the
Okay,
answer to
the
that.
only reason I say that, because if it's part of their tax bill, their taxes are subsidizing the system. The difference in our community is we have a user-based system, which is completely separate from the taxpayer-based system. And I think that's the difference. That's why people are concerned, because they're getting the same exact service, but outside the village they're paying more. But they're not, there's really no benefit being a village taxpayer if you use water and sewer, because it's a user-based system. So in other words, there should be some equity across the system. We shouldn't be trying to make money off people who just don't happen to live in the municipality, because this has nothing to do with village resident or town residents. It has to do with they are a user of the system. That's the only point I wanted to make. I think those other systems you cited, not knowing this municipality specifically, but a lot of them, it's on their tax bill. So it's not really a completely separate system like we have in our community.
Two points to make. First, I'm not sure how different it is. We're talking rates. But secondly, I don't agree with the position that we should charge people outside the village equally, and here's why. We share equipment. For example, pick a piece of equipment, a dump truck, partially subsidized by, say, wastewater treatment, sewer, but also general fund. So the taxpayers in the village are subsidizing a portion of that vehicle. So if, now just a minute now, if that wasn't the case, if we were in a taxpayer system as you're talking about, then it wouldn't matter.
Right. But those charges, I assume, for that vehicle are based on the amount of time it's used for specific jobs. So in other words, the ratepayers in the water system, when it's used for its water duties or sewer duties, it's absorbed through that system. That's why you split it up.
Exactly.
If the vehicle were completely coming from the village taxpayer, I would have to agree with you. But the very fact that you siphon off money from water and sewer to help pay for those municipal vehicles means that those users are helping pay for that vehicle.
You're exactly right, but in the absence of the system that we use, the wastewater treatment plant would have to purchase the entire vehicle, thereby driving the rates up. So, and I don't know. I'm speculating that when we initially built the water plant, it was done with taxpayer money. The village did it when we got into the business. I'd have to make that assumption. There was no such thing as a water district back then. So, I mean, I understand there's some valid points to your argument, but when you look at how how everyone else does it and the difference in the rates and how low we charge additional rates, I'm not sure I'm convinced that making a change makes sense.
Well, I understand, except right now on my water bill, I'm paying for the Maple Street project. And I benefit absolutely nil from the Maple Street project. It's part of being part of a municipality, being part of the system. It's part of being part of a community. It's just the way it is. But when you start chipping away and breaking things out, you have to be consistent. You can't do it with just one or two things. You have to do it across the board or not do it at all.
See, that's, he is making a good point, but he's only talking about half the truth. Way back when, we had a pilot system. The pilot system went away when Alcoa came onto our system. So in lieu of the pilot system, the plan that was put in place by Democrats, Republicans, men, women, township, village, everybody decided that it would be a fair thing to charge people outside of the village of Massena more than they charge people inside the village of Massena. I believe the value that came up with was 30 cents, and it hasn't really changed much since. So there was always a difference. The only thing is now it's not in the form of a pilot, it's in form of a user charge.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Further public comment? Yes, sir. See you there.
this won't take long, and I'm not Mark. But, the only thing I think, you know, you guys are doing a great job, but, I've been down at the wastewater plant now, let's say, I got 25 years of service in the village. The only thing that I could say, because we are undermanned as far as, the wastewater plant and water plant, and we need to have bodies. When we get taken off a job to repair, I'll give you for instance, we had to replace a raw sewage pump today. We waited for pieces of parts, and when any time that a situation comes up like that, we have to shut down another operation. Whether it be solids, FST, something's always going wrong. And like Mark said, we do have an aging plant. And it's hard because we had 3 people work on that today. We got it up and running. But there's still other things that we need to have running at the same token. We're kind of defeating our purpose there. The other thing is, with having you guys hiring people, we're not getting any younger. We're 52, 55, 56, we're getting older. And we need to start training people to come in and start learning our process. And I feel that's very important. And while we are reaching an age and we're getting closer to retirement, we need to train those people to know what we know and get them on board. So that, I think that's very significant. That's all I really, oh, and on the same token, there's a safety issue. If a guy gets hurt, then we're down another man. If a guy goes on vacation, we're still down another man. So that means 2 people have to still pick up the pace to make sure our equipment and our processes, our procedures, still go strong. So, we need people. We need to address this. And that's all I have to say. That's very important. Thank you.
Sean, could you speak up a little bit? I couldn't hear you as well as I could hear Mark.
Go over here, sit in this chair, and I'll talk to you.
Further public comment?
Just had a quick question.
Sure.
2 questions. Regarding the wastewater hire that you guys did make, can someone just quickly kind of explain like the process on how that was?
Just speak up a little, I'm sorry.
The hiring like process for the wastewater position, just what that process.
Civil service, his civil service job, there was 2 sets of interviews, and
Okay.
candidates rose to the top.
And the budget numbers you said you have a copy of that I could
Yes,
afterwards?
we have to provide to. Further public comment? Mr.
Following
Meyer?
up on what Victor asked, what's the process when you have family members in the same department? What's the process the village follows to ensure that there's no concern of nepotism?
We currently do not have a process. We are in the process of developing a nepotism policy to avoid any perception of that occurring.
I'm quite sure if you go to the conference of mayors, have something, I'm sure there's boilerplate.
There is.
You know, we don't have to.
There is.
And is there any role that the father would play in this hiring?
Say that again?
Is there any role a father would have played in this hiring?
No. final hiring now?
No, I asked about the process.
Oh, you said the hiring, you didn't use the word process.
I'll use the word process then.
Rather than dance around this, why don't we just talk about it, you know, all right? It's a personnel issue, so I'm gonna avoid the specifics of it, okay? The position in the wastewater treatment plants and the water plant are competitive positions by civil service specifications. So that means someone would have to successfully take the civil service exam, pass it, and then score in the reachable area. In this case, because of one vacancy, they have to be in the top 3. So then they're considered by those terms as eligible candidates. The eligible candidates are provided to us by the St. Lawrence County Personnel Office, who administers the test and all of that type of stuff. In this case, interviews were conducted, and after they were completed, a concern was brought forth about a potential conflict of interest. I'm going to use my cop terminology, but you know, I did an inquiry, an investigation, looked into it, and at the opinion of our attorney, the legal opinion of our attorney, there was no legal conflict. However, recognizing there was a potential perceived conflict, and in consultation with village trustees and our attorney again, I directed that the interview process be conducted again, and the party involved that could have been the perceived potential conflict removed from that process. So in short, we did the process over to remove any possibility that there was an issue, a conflict of interest issue, that conflict of interest issue. I should point out, first result yielded a recommendation. The second process yielded a recommendation. Those 2 recommendations were identical. And the perceived conflict of interest was removed from the second process. So going forth, we're going to try to specify this a little bit better so that we can avoid any perception of a conflict of interest in the future. We recognize the importance of that. Sometimes perception is important as reality. Further questions or comments from the public? Seeing no hands, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Say one thing, Mayor.
Yes.
I listened to the employees of the village go on and on about needing a person down there or whatever. But one thing I want to, well, this is, and they kind of blame us as a board for not filling this position. But they turned around and stated that there was a list out 2 years ago or whatever, 3 years ago, and they did not want to hire off that list. So therefore, they went 2.5 to 3 years without filling that position, not us. They did it because they didn't like who was on the list at the time. They just said that. Now, we have automated plants. I realize there's maintenance down there, but if this was a privately owned place, they wouldn't hire another person. They definitely wouldn't hire another person when they went 3 years without somebody, found out that they could do it. And to say that anybody is not replaceable, that's crazy. Anybody in this world is replaceable. I don't care who they are or what they do. We have presidents that get assassinated when they're in office, and the country goes right on moving. It doesn't even lose 1 second. It goes on. As Paul Patterson used to say, anybody's as hard to replace as that hole when you pick your fist out of a 5-gallon bucket of water. That hole that remains, that's how hard you are to replace. So nobody's irreplaceable here. I don't care who they are, you know, and I'm sick of listening to that. We've got more equipment today than we've ever had at this village. Back when I started to work for the village, we got 10 cents over minimum wage. That was the starting wage. Today we're starting an employee off at $55,000 a year. I think that's more than 10 cents over minimum wage. More than $10 over minimum wage. And how long can we continue to do this and get the taxpayer? I have many, many people come up to me and say, don't raise my water rates, I can't take it anymore. Don't raise my sewer rates. These are old people that are on limited incomes. You know, and when I first retired, or when I was working, I thought, they're just whiners. They
just whine, they just don't wanna think, they just don't like it, you know. I've been 7 years without a raise, be 8 years this month coming without a raise. But you know, everything has gone up with that, now I know what they're talking about. We cannot continue to run the operation where we're running and just throw money at a problem. We've gotta be more like the private sector and put more duties on everybody. The DPW has workers down there. If they're short at the sewer plant one day, I'm sure they can find somebody to go down there and help out for a couple hours with a project that needs to be done. And that's why I say that it all comes out of the same taxpayer's pants. I don't care what pocket you take it out of, it's all coming out of the taxpayer. And we as trustees are supposed to be working for the people and do the best we can with what we've got. And to think that just because we can throw money out and throw money out, that's gonna take care of the problem, well, pretty soon the well's gonna be dry. Then what are we going to do? There'll be no money left.
Just one clarification.
You know, and that just bothers me, that's what bothers me the most. Nobody thinks about the taxpayer anymore, you know? And guys can't sit there and think today that, you know, Alcoa had 6,000 people back a few years ago. Now they're down to what, 900? We have no more rentals, no more General Motors in this town. Where's the money gonna come from? Retirees? Pretty soon we won't have any retirees in town. Nobody's gonna be able to afford it. I don't care if we're the cheapest or not. If you look at that thing on the water rates, the two people that have the cheapest water rates are the ones that draw their water out of the St. Lawrence River. Because it's a fairly clean river. The other two, or the other ones on there, because they draw their water out of either wells or a river that's not as clean as the St. Lawrence, and there's more processing probably and everything else into it. So you can't just compare in saying that we're cheaper than the rest. There's reasons behind everything why we're cheaper. Like I say, we've got a river out there that's got, you know, unending flow. We don't have to worry about whether our wells are gonna go dry. Canton takes their water from Waterman Hill, miles out of the village. That's probably why their rates are a little bit higher. Like I was saying, we cannot continually go to the taxpayer for more and more and more. Sooner or later, they're not gonna have it.
Thank you, Mr. Carvel. Mr. Wilson.
I was just wondering, just a clarification, that $55,000 quote was for the senior operator's position, correct? That's the starting pay for the senior operator's position, not an entry-level position into the water plant.
Cheryl, that's the budget amount.
When the water